Julia from Family, and we're here at Nursery World 2023. I'm sat here with Kelly Hill, the CEO of the Early Years Company, and Kelly has agreed to answer some of our questions. So thank you so much, Kelly.
You're very welcome.
We don't want to start out too depressing, but the sector is struggling. Settings need some help, and we know that leaders reach out to you for that help. So in your experience, what are settings struggling with at the moment? Where are leaders looking for your support?
I think it's a broad umbrella of support that people are looking for. We know that recruitment is really difficult, and they're not necessarily reaching out for support with recruitment because they know what they're doing. It's just the sector in itself is in a bit of a crisis where it comes to recruitment, but we do a lot of support around there. But the biggest thing that people reach out for us for is that support with their own leadership. We know that managers become managers because they're great practitioners. They grow through the ranks, they become a leader, and suddenly they're left with HR, business, management, finance, adults to manage instead of little people. So that's where we find that people reach out to us the most, is that support with their own leadership and development and growth.
It's interesting, and it's understandable with people coming in and, like you say, becoming great practitioners, and suddenly you're expected to sit behind a desk all day and run a business, and you might not have the experience for that. With that in mind, I suppose, out of those business areas of support, where do you feel that leaders could do with the most help or the most guidance?
I think it's twofold. Firstly, they need to be able to outsource where they need to. So where their skill set isn't perhaps payroll or HR, outsource that. Ask for help. Pay someone else to do that instead of it taking your time up, in the setting. And then secondly, it's having those difficult and challenging conversations with other adults. That's where we find the most tricky problems are occurring, because they like I say, they're used to working with little people and families, and having those soft and gentle conversations. But then when you become a manager and you have to manage adults, it can become quite hard. And having those candid, open conversations that are sometimes a little bit difficult, people can find that really challenging. And especially in early years, because we're a lovely bunch of people, aren't we? We're caring, we want the best for people. So actually having those conversations can be quite tricky, and we do a lot of work around confidence building, around having candid conversations, and the importance of that. It's really important to tell people when they're doing something wrong, or when something needs to change, or when their behaviours need to improve, because if you don't tell them, then they're not going to be able to improve, and that's unfair. So a lot around those candid conversations, and being able to develop themselves as leaders to really take their business forward.
That's lovely, and it makes so much sense as well, because as educators, we are used to dealing with children and supporting children's development and growth. But when it comes to adults, that's a very different conversation, right?
Yeah,
it can be very
absolutely
intimidating.
Yes.
You spoke there a little bit about outsourcing things that can be outsourced, where managers feel maybe that their strengths don't lie. But where settings are struggling to increase revenue and reduce costs, and also support parents who are also feeling the pinch, what would your advice be in terms of kind of managing that balance?
Well, it's important to realise that where your skill set is where you're going to make the most money. You should always be spending your time on the areas of your business that you can have the most impact and generate the most revenue. So if you are brilliant at tours and show arounds and converting inquiries, then that's where you should be spending your time. But if conversely you're not great at payroll, or you're not great at doing the cash flow forecast, but that takes hours and hours because you're not great at it, what a waste of your time. You should be giving that to someone else to do, so that you can spend your time on those inquiries and the things that you're great at doing in terms of building your business. Similarly, if you're really good at scaffolding staff's learning in the moment, because we talk a lot about scaffolding children's learning, but actually we should be doing that with our staff teams. We should be catching them doing the things good, and then scaffolding the things that need to be sort of improved or upskilled a little bit in that moment with the staff. If you're sat in your office poring over bits of paperwork that you don't know how to do, and you're missing a trick when your skill set is really helping your team to grow and develop in the setting. So it's about we do an exercise called the Orange Box tasks, and we do it with our coaching clients, where we identify what are the things that are you're really good at and you really enjoy doing, and those are the things you need to do, because that's where your most value is. And what are the things that anyone can do, and you don't really enjoy doing, because that's what you can delegate out to somebody else. So we do that task as part of our coaching, and it really helps managers to understand that's where I need to focus my time. And actually, if I focus my time on that and delegate that, then I'm bringing in more revenue, because that's what I'm good at doing.
That's fantastic advice, and also quite comforting, I think.
Yeah.
If there's things you're really enjoying, then the advice is to do more of that.
Yes.
And that's what's going to drive your revenue. That's brilliant news for setting leaders.
Absolutely. I own a nursery as well as the early years company, and I know that my manager she really enjoys social media, and she really enjoys, creating some great social media content to help us improve our occupancy, to help drive more families through the door. And so go away, do it. Like, spend your time doing that. It's having a positive impact. So go and do more of that. And the bit that you don't enjoy, well, somebody else can do that, because they might enjoy it. We all like different things, right?
I love that. I love that. We've touched on it a little bit already, but with the way that the sector often develops our leadership workforce by coming in as an apprentice or as a level 3, and you go up the ranks, you become a senior educator or a senior practitioner, maybe a deputy, and then often a manager. So suddenly you're going from working in the rooms with the children to running a business.
Yeah.
But where could we as a sector better prepare our leaders for that change, where they're going from the classroom to the office, essentially?
Yeah. Firstly, there has to be a mindset shift. And that is that actually, I'm now looking at a strategic view of my nursery. I'm not looking at my room or my key children. This is a strategic viewpoint, and I've got to be strategic, and I've got to think about the bigger picture of my nursery. Once that mindset shift has happened, you then need to shift it again, that it's okay to make a profit. It's okay to think about money. It's okay if we don't make a profit in our nurseries, or a surplus if you're a non-profit organisation. How can you reinvest? How can you reinvest in your staff training? How can you buy new resources? How can you grow and develop? So it's understanding that profit's not a dirty word, first of all, in business. And again, in early years, we're a caring bunch. We want to offer services that anyone can come and be part of our nursery, and we want to be able to support families who are struggling. But ultimately, if we don't make enough money, we're not going to stick around for very long. So there's that mindset shift, first of all. And then I think it's about reaching out to other people that can support you in that leadership role, because it's a massive jump from being in the rooms with the children to suddenly having to manage a business. So it's reaching out. It's making sure you've got the support from people like us, from other nursery managers locally. Reach out to them, make connections. We do a thing called the 90-day planning meetings, where all of our nursery managers that we work with come together and we plan the next 90 days and we look at actions for developing their business. But we also have lunch together, we network together. It really helps build relationships. And I know that they pick up the phone and speak to me when they're in a bit of a crisis, but they also pick up the phone and speak to each other. And often another nursery manager has been there, done that, and can offer a bit of advice. So definitely getting that support, but then finding actual CPD. So we do things like Coaching Club, which is an online coaching club. We do the Excel program for new and developing leaders. And then we do coaching for established leaders who want that next step. So it's about finding the right level of support for you and reaching out and kind of knowing that you're not on your own. We're all in the same boat. I did exactly the same. I was a nursery practitioner and went up to nursery manager and found that gap, which is, where Early's company came from.
It makes so much sense as well, because I think as a sector, we are a little bit shy about needing to make money. And realistically, like you say, we absolutely need to, in order to keep providing that service for children and for parents. So it's definitely a really key bit of advice there. I think that's wonderful. Yeah. To think a little bit about those managers where they're a single site setting, maybe, perhaps they're the highest leader in the business, perhaps they're doing several different jobs all at once. Where would you suggest that they begin to prioritise? It can often feel that when you're the one doing the invoicing and you're the one doing, everything else, it can feel really difficult to work out where to start.
Yeah.
What would your advice be to those managers that are thinking, oh my goodness, I'm drowning here?
Yeah, absolutely. And we come across so many of those managers all the time. So the first thing I would say is scrap your to-do list, because what happens is that to-do list becomes really, really long. And then you find yourself doing things that aren't on the list, so you add them to the list just so you can cross them off, because you want to feel a little bit like you've actually done something today. So those massively long to-do lists are not any help. They just make you feel like I've got all this to do and I can't do it. So I would say every single day, Often the night before is better. Before you leave the office the night before, write down 3 things that you want to achieve the following day, just 3. And that's one thing that has a deadline. So it has to be done tomorrow. So it could be your head count. It could be, I don't know, a parent needs something and they've got a deadline to achieve it, maybe for a SEND child or something like that. So one thing that's a deadline, one thing that you'd like to do. So one thing that actually in your job you really enjoy doing that. So it might be writing the newsletter, or it might be observing a practice or doing a supervision or something that you enjoy. And one thing that would be the cherry on the top. So the cherry on the top is I'd really like to achieve that tomorrow if I can. But if I don't, it's no big deal. Like, it's not that big a deal. And those 3 things then suddenly don't feel quite so overwhelming. Suddenly I'm meeting a deadline, I'm doing something I enjoy doing, and I've got a cherry on the top that would really make my day. And that, even though you still do all your other stuff, it sets your mindset that I know those are my 3 priorities for that day. Also, there's a great book, Eat That Frog. I'm sure many people have heard of it, but that is really important. Look at your tasks and do the worst task of the day first. Get it out of the way, eat the frog, and just get on with the rest of your day and delegate. That's the other thing. We often think in early years that we have to do everything ourselves as managers. And actually, if you're not delegating, then you're preventing the next person from learning how to become the leader. So you're not giving them the opportunity if you're not giving them the work to do. So by saying, could you do the rotas this week? Or would you mind looking at whatever? It doesn't really matter what it is, but delegating that out, they will probably go, absolutely, yes, I really want to start learning that. And so you're developing them and developing their CPD. And at the same time, you're pulling back some of the work that you've got to do. The delegation is key.
That is fantastic advice as well, that you can turn your delegation into somebody else's development.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. And
absolutely.
It's the almost the best way, like you say, that we can help support that next generation of leaders to perhaps be a little bit better prepared.
Yeah. If we don't, what kind of role model are you being to your deputy manager? If you're constantly busy, constantly stressed, I can't do this and I can't do that, and I haven't got time for this and I haven't got time for that, and I haven't had a lunch break in 3 weeks, and what role model is that? Who would want to become a nursery manager if that's what they're seeing, if that's their observation? So we need to be the role model, and we need to be like, right, okay, I need to close the door for an hour. Unless the building's on fire, please don't disturb me. I need to get this done. And then I will come and have an open door for the rest of the afternoon. And could you make sure that by the end of the day you have done this, please? Because that would be really helpful. That is a much better role model than, running around like a headless chicken.
Again, that's fantastic advice, because I think there are a lot of managers who perhaps don't feel that they can take a step back once in a while and say, actually, I need this time undisturbed. Even that itself is a step in the right direction, and potentially a big one for some managers. But I think that can be really powerful. That's wonderful.
Making an appointment with yourself in your diary is really important. So if we had an appointment with a show around with a family, or we had an appointment with a social worker in our diary, we wouldn't cancel that. We would do it. So making an appointment with ourselves, whether that be once a month or once a week, just to sit quietly, be strategic, reflect on the week, think about what you need to do next week, really consider what that impact of that on everyone, the impact of that on the wider business, and just breathe for a minute is really important. And again, that's where our 90-day planning meetings can really help them to take the time out of the nursery once every 3 months and really think about the strategic view of their nurseries.
That's fantastic, and it's so important. I would like to find out a little bit more about, so those managers who we've talked about who really might be looking for help, where else can they find support?
Okay, well, obviously they could come to us. We have online coaching, we have face-to-face coaching, we have little clubs that they can join for support, and of course our Facebook, social media, that kind of thing. But reaching out to one another and just networking with each other. If you've got a couple of local nurseries, make friends with the managers and grab a coffee once a month, have a piece of cake and just have a chat about, price increases. Well, what are you doing? How are you going to do yours? What do you think your parents are going to say? And even, we've got a problem with this parent, we're not really meeting the child's needs, but I know you've got this facility in your setting. I think maybe we should be able to support that family in your nursery. Having those conversations and stop being quite as competitive as we have been over the years and start working together. I think especially single site settings that don't have a HR function, they don't have a head office, they don't have anyone above them. Collaborate together, we're stronger together, and that's what we should be doing more of.
Absolutely. Finally, when managers think about that time they're taking, so they've closed the office door, they're having their kind of breather and they're thinking strategically, where where might they start looking at kind of business goals or priorities? Where might they kind of begin when they're at the very first stages of that?
Well, I always say start with dumb goals. So often we talk about smart goals, and they're important, smart actions, but dumb goals, I think, is a really good place to start for owners or nursery managers. So they're your dreams. That's where the D comes from. So what are the dreams for their business? Is it that you're going to grow? Is it that in 5 years' time you want to sell? Where are you heading? Because if you don't know where you're heading, then there's no journey, is there? They need to be uplifting. So they need to be goals that really make you feel good, that you think, okay, I know where I'm heading, I know what I want, I know the impact of this positively on everyone. And then the method. So what method are you going to use? What's your journey going to look like? How are you going to get there? And then the B is the behaviour. So what behaviour do you need to exhibit and be and change potentially in order to achieve those dreams? So once you've got that, you've kind of got a starting point. And from there, you can break them down into smaller actions, smaller goals. And that's exactly what we do in the 90-day planning. So every 90 days, we've got a plan of, okay, I want to increase my occupancy by 10%. What do I need to do? Then we work backwards. In order to do that, you need to improve your marketing. So what do you need to do for that? You need to maybe change your show around times. You need to maybe observe someone doing a show around and see if they do better than you do. You need to look at your conversion rates. Are you monitoring your conversion rates? Do you know how many parents you convert when you've shown them around? And we can build those small actions so that there's just little steps every single day towards that bigger goal. Otherwise, the big goal can feel a little bit too much to achieve.
That is incredible advice. Thank you so much. It's been absolutely amazing talking to you. And I think for everyone watching and listening, that's also some really powerful advice there. So thank you so much, Kelly.
You're very welcome. Thank you.